So therefore, we would support stronger regulation of betting shops and advertising as outlined in the proposition. Delegates, now turning to the proposition from Glasgow number 1, which we're opposing. Let me explain why. Conference, we're not against the principle of a maximum level of income. The question is, what is that level? This proposition talks about it 10 times, and to be fair, Richie said he could have picked another figure. The truth is, we're fully engaged currently with the TUC, with the Labour Party, about what a legal maximum should be. There's also a question whether this union can run a public campaign with all the other issues we've got, where it's much better to work as a collective group of trade unionists from different unions on this issue. Conference, let me also put a little bit of balance in this, because I don't want to create the impression amongst this audience that what Richie was saying on the balance of fairness is wrong. But it's about how we educate and articulate this argument. And our preference is to do it through the Labour Party, through the TUC, working with those trade unions as a collective group, as opposed to just picking one figure and then the union having the responsibility to lead a public campaign. Richie, I know, for instance, the socialist workers have many policy issues. I'm well aware of that. I didn't say you were, I said the Socialist Workers' Party have many issues. And often many of those issues conflict with the Labour Party. Our affiliation to the Labour Party is clearly the direction of travel we want to make. There is many billionaires and there's many millionaires, but there's another issue that I would just express to you as delegates here. My suggestion is that we work with the TUC and the Labour Party, but there's a balance to be struck. First of all, there shouldn't be the greed that is often seen by many executives, and I would applaud that sentiment expressed by Richie. But we also want the right decision makers in those companies to make the right decisions that affect you as employees. In other words, you want the best skilled CEOs to make sure that the company doesn't get into difficulty. So our real frustration with this, Richie, is a question of why 10. And we want to work through, as I say, our affiliated relationship with the Labour Party and the TUC unions. In fact, I've had lots of discussions with the unions about what that maximum should be, and it's something that will be debated with our executive. Delegates, I don't want this to be seen as that we support a situation where these CEOs pay themselves what they want. We don't. The principle of having a maximum is right. But the other issue as well, Conference, is this. Our main objective is to lift the bottom up. There's no clear evidence that if there was a maximum of 10, that money would not go either to the shareholders or somewhere else in the business. This requires a real intense debate about a maximum salary. So please, delegates, whatever the decision you take in voting on this proposition, feel the executive are out of touch. We're not. There are many examples, one or two I cited in my response to this proposition, particularly on the directors' decisions where many companies abuse the position of power. So I want you to allow our executive, for me, and in fact my predecessor, to continue this debate within the TUC. Don't see this as a fudge to bury the proposition, because much of it we agree with, particularly the main headline. Conference, we know this needs to be addressed. We know it needs to be addressed. Companies should certainly have to publish the difference between the average worker's pay and that of the top bosses. Scrutiny and transparency on this is extremely important. They should have to explain and justify the gap. And we should hold them to account for what they reward themselves. And equally, so should the shareholders hold them to account for overpayment and exaggerated payments. And I know when Richie referred to some of the statistics, some of those numbers are extreme numbers in terms of your experience of a reward policy. And of course the real question is, what is the rate for the job? We can all have an opinion on what people should be paid. Starting from the lowest paid job to the highest paid job, there will be an argument about what the value of those jobs are. But certainly what they shouldn't be, it certainly shouldn't be excessive, and it should be balanced out. in a way that's fair, and that's why we want to enter and continue the debate within the TUC. In fact, it's one of the big issues we're debating with the Labour Party currently about a maximum cap. There'll be many arguments about what that cap should be, but the principle of the cap is right. Delegates, not only should they have to explain and justify the cap, they should have workers on the boards that set company directors' pay, but not as a token gesture where you fill somebody's position on the board, where people are properly trained and the job description of sitting on the board is clear. It's no good if you're on the board and all you're expected to do is endorse the decision. You've got to be able to be trained, and we've got to give the skills to people to play an active part on those boards. Because the danger is, if you're not, you effectively become an add-on and end up just rubber stamping the decision of other people.
John, just before you go on, I know we've gone past the 5 o'clock mark. I've got to suspend standing orders with conference's decision. Is that okay while we finish this section? Do you agree?
Delegates, I'm conscious of that. I will be quick. Delegates, I'm clear that the director's pay issue, 100% support. This issue we have some reservations, Richie, and therefore we're opposing. Besides that, delegates, let me say it's been an excellent debate. It will remain at the core of everything we do. All of these issues are important. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, bear with me, I know it's tea time, but given the importance of this issue, I want to make a couple of responses to John's comments. First of all, to get out of the way, I'm not quite sure why John has more than once dragged an extraneous matter into this conference about the Socialist Workers' Party. I never have been and never will be a member of that organisation. I'm a proud member of the Scottish Socialist Party, for the record, many years after being expelled from the Labour Party, and he knows that. So I'm not sure what relevance that has, because the key thing for us is to discuss the fact that we put forward, to use the exact words, a maximum income, not salary, income, initially fixed at 10 to 1. That's conscious, because I share the feeling that it shouldn't be left to USDAW alone to go forward on this issue. We should be part of the wider trade union movement and the broader labour movement. That's referred to in the proposition, if you read it for yourself again. I don't object to John and others who are in the Labour Party raising it with the Labour Party, or obviously with the TUC. Not at all. That should be done. That's actually in the proposition. There should be lobbying of political parties and so on, as well as the TUC and other trade union formations across Britain. That should be done. But somebody has to start. And when, for example, that's taken into those bodies, I would have no objection whatsoever if we had as an ADM, and it's our property, this motion, if this ADM decides that yes, we support 32, yes, we support as an initial proposal a 10 to 1 differential between the maximum income and the minimum wage, if in discussions in the trade unions and in the Labour Party, people came forward with, for example, 8 to 1 or 9 to 1 or 5 to 1, I wouldn't object in the least. But when it comes down to it, John's argument seems to be mostly, you have to balance, you have to have the skills and the right kinds of CEOs and so on. Stripped down to concrete terms, I think what he's arguing is that we have to give incentive to the very rich to take on those very rich posts. And let me spell it out, what our proposal involves. It's extremely moderate and modest. It's saying that if you assume a 35-hour week, a policy I strongly, passionately advocate, if you assume that, a 10 to 1 differential in today's figures on the policy of the union for a £10 minimum wage would be £100 an hour. That's £3,500 a week. It's £182,000 a year. Who in hell could object to it being limited to that as an income? Who could argue that it's a disincentive to do a job, a skilled job, however skilled it might be, if you only get up to £182,000? And by the way, it doesn't even affect a full 1% of the population. The infamous 1% that's talked about nowadays are those on roughly £150,000 and more. This is setting a ceiling of £182,000 as the maximum income. The trade unions have to pioneer things sometimes. Those who fought in the 1970s inside the TUC for a national minimum wage, unions represent the most downtrodden like Newby at the time and so on. They didn't get a majority at first in the TUC, but they persisted. And then the TUC didn't get it implemented at first, but they persisted. And the employers denounced the very idea of a national minimum wage, saying it would be a disincentive to work. So apparently, the incentive that workers need is to be low paid to force us to work, but for the incentive for the top bosses, and even John's echoing this to an extent, is that they should be allowed to earn as much as they decide amongst themselves and not have a maximum legally established by the government. We can't sit back and wait for social justice of the Tories. We can't sit back and wait for a social conscience to erupt in the boardrooms of big business. We need to argue the case as a union amongst our own members, inside the TUC, inside the Labour Party. I'm already convinced in the Scottish Socialist Party, but convince people of this policy to then go forward and try and get it adopted. And the mechanics of how it's implemented is a different discussion altogether. Taxation, law, and so on. But if, boiled down to essence, it's a case of saying, really there's a danger of making a disincentive to big business chiefs if we have this scene of 10 to 1, then really that begs the question, what on earth are we going to allow society to become like when they can get 183 times the average wage or whatever else figure you want to quote? I move and make sure this ADM decides and then ask the NEC to pursue it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm putting proposition 32 to the vote. We are opposing. All those in favour?
Oh.
Those against? Thank you. Those against? Hard vote. Position, please.
Love it.
Position 32, which is the blue card. Can you please hold them up so the tellers can see? And tell us once again if you can tell me when you've got them. Okay, thank you. That probably get the results tomorrow. We've got